My name is John Maddog Hall, and I am the president of Linux International and the board chair of the Linux Professional Institute. My talk today is entitled The Best Holiday Present You Will Ever Receive. Yes, I am really old. I've been programming since 1969, and in May of 1994, I met Linus Torvalds, saw Linux, and figured that this was a pretty good thing. I've been talking about Linux and free software ever since. People do not really buy hardware or software. In the old days, you might buy a computer and you might buy a particular operating system. But these days, what people really want to buy is a solution to a problem. Even if you're a gamer and the problem you're trying to solve is playing your game, that's the most important thing to you. And most people do not care whether it's on a particular piece of hardware or using a particular operating system. And this is true of most people. Most people can't tell you whether using an Android phone or an iOS phone. They think of it as an Apple phone or something else, but they don't care about the software underneath as long as it solves their problem. So the best holiday present that you can give anybody is a gift of your time. It's relatively inexpensive, and the best part about it is that not only are you helping them solve their problem, but you're learning at the same time, and you can reapply this learning to other people and other gifts. The first thing I'm going to talk about is a problem that a lot of people are having these days. They have a relatively new laptop or desktop, or even an old one, and they're finding that Windows 11, if they're a Microsoft user, is not going to run on approximately 12% of these systems. They're simply too old to use the security issues and the security features that Windows 11 talks about. And even if it can run Windows 11, 34% of those systems may need upgrades of memory or GPUs in order for Windows 11 to work properly. Linux works well on these systems and a lot of older systems. And there's thousands of free applications for Linux if you want to look for them. What you can do is work with the person who has the older laptop and create a live DVD or a live USB stick to be able to test the hardware that they have and see that Linux does indeed support all of that hardware. If it does, you can then go ahead and install GNU Linux on their system and help them be able to figure out how to use it and how to find applications that they need. You can also use this to recycle computers from companies or acquaintances that have them. Perhaps a bank is upgrading their systems and they're going to be throwing out their old computers. Linux is a perfect operating system to put on those and then repurpose those computers that would normally go into a landfill to some type of person who needs one. So the path to this is to first look for a version of Linux that is both a long-term support distribution, because once you install it and the person starts to use it, they want to be able to continue using it into the future. And second, pick a major distribution which is known for being relatively easy to use for what we call newbies. These would be systems like Fedora or Ubuntu or Mint or OpenSUSE or others that are very robust, full distributions, but they're made with lots of documentation so that people will be able to find them. Then you can help them set up their peripherals they have, whether it be a printer or a scanner or whatever type of peripheral they have in their house that they need to work with the Linux system. Then you help them to attach to the networking they have. Most of the time, they'll have a wireless networking hub, or they'll have an internet connection that comes into the house, or they'll have some type of router. You can help them set Linux up to utilize that networking. And then go through and help them to install and set up the applications they need. Have them list the applications that they use. Instead of saying Microsoft Office, or they could say that, Have them say, I need an office package. I need to be able to look at PDF files. I need to be able to print things. And you can find these applications either with the Linux distribution that you've installed for them or by going out onto the net and searching for them off the net. Also, before you leave, show them how to use search engines. Effectively ask the questions to say, oh, I'm looking for a photo program for Linux, or I'm looking for whatever type of thing they're looking for, to help them solve their own problems in the future. Ways that you can speed up these systems. Now, a lot of people say, well, the system is really slow. It's really old. But it may seem that way because you're trying to run Windows on it. And Windows is a system that uses a lot of resources. You can take Linux and make it work well on a system that has only 4 to 8 gigabytes of RAM. Modern day Windows systems, they're looking for 16 gigabytes of RAM. And that's a lot, particularly on an older system. Another thing you can do is take out the hard disk drive, the moving head disk drive, and put in an SSD, a solid state device. This will speed up the old notebook considerably because it does not have to move the disk head in order to find the data you want. Then if that's a regular SATA SSD, would make it work considerably faster. But if your system supports an M2 MVE type of SSD, if you put that in, it's really fast. And that can really speed up the system. And while you're at it, give them a new battery too, so that they'd be able to use it for a long period of time. If you put in an SSD instead of the hard disk drive, and you have the new battery, you may find that the notebook works or the laptop works a long time on that battery because it doesn't have to keep moving the hard disk drive. Now, in the past, we've had mix and match multimedia systems. If you're as old as me, you remember buying all these different components, a turntable for your record, a CD or DVD recorder or player, a tape deck for magnetic tape, a separate tuner to capture the radio signals and put it down, a preamplifier to amplify it, an equalizer, a power amplifier, and all sorts of speakers. And it was great because you get all of these from different manufacturers and they would work fairly well together and you'd be able to adjust it to make your music. These days, a lot of times you go to the store and you've got an all-in-one system. It's just one box and it has everything. And if you don't like the features of that one box, you can't trade it out to get anything else. You can't merge the different technologies that are coming out with the older gear that you have. And with something like a smart TV, maybe it's from companies like LG or Sanyo or something like that, inside of that smart TV, there's lots of software. And the question comes about what happens when that company loses interest in that model. They say, we're no longer supporting it. Where they say, upgrade to get this, and you don't want to upgrade. You're happy with what you have. So, but you still need security fixes because it's hooked up to the internet. Or maybe the company goes out of business, or they don't even produce smart TVs anymore. All of these things will leave you with a kind of a pariah of, a smart TV. So what you could do is build your own smart TV. You can get Kodi, which is software that fits on a wide range of different systems. And you can then, because of Kodi, you can store and show pictures from your phone, videos from off the net, videos that you take, music that you capture in some way, shape, or form, and store that with Kodi. You can also have inexpensive hardware and speakers for a 2.1 system. That's left and right speaker with a subwoofer, 5.1, left and right front, left and right back with a subwoofer and a center. 7.1, center speaker, left and right front, left and right back, and side speakers. All of those are configurable with Kodi. You can also have a 4K LCD or projection TV through your HDMI port. You can buy an extra dongle or use your cable to capture over-the-air TV pictures and stuff like that, or internet video transmission. All of these things are supported by Kodi, and you can put them together into a really powerful package. You can use your cell phone to control the screen of what's showing and things like that, to select music, to select channels, all that type of stuff. It's really, really fantastic system. And you can use the same computer that's running Kodi to also browse the internet. And so a person is not just buying a computer to run multimedia, and they're not just buying a computer to access the internet, but they're buying a computer that everything can be put together and be able to give them a very powerful system at a very low cost. On top of that, you can put Home Assistant I/O, which does home automation, and we'll cover more about that later on in the talk. You could also set up a webcam with software to detect motion. And so if you're worried about security in your apartment, you can aim the webcam at the front door of the apartment, and if anybody comes in, it can set off an alarm. It can send a picture of that person to your cell phone. And so you can have kind of a burglar alarm set up. Now, this was a very simple version of Kodi, which I put together at a trade show one time. It only has the two speakers, and it's showing a video there. It was great. We could demonstrate the functionality, and it was a very powerful system. This is a minimal system, and you can set it up to be an extremely powerful system. Along the same lines of Kodi, you can set up a home server, which allows you to take all of your computers and store your data all in one place. So if you want to back it up for all of your computers at one time, you could do that. Linux, acting as a server, can support files from Windows, Apple, BSD Unix, and of course Linux files over the network, your own network, working at very high speeds. At the same time, you could use this home server to set up a Plex media server, so that if you wanted to get your data, whether it be videos or anything else, and watch it on multiple systems simultaneously, you can store all of that on your Plex media server and be able to access it from any place in your network. Since we're talking about a network, we can talk about a personal or community secure server. A friend of mine, who's a law professor at Columbia University, about 10 years ago, was concerned about the fact that people were storing all sorts of data that should be private on things like Google or Amazon or other types of cloud servers. And the problem with that is twofold. Number one, there's a lot of people that are looking at that, kind of trying to break in all the time, and they could get access to your credit card numbers or things like that. The second thing is, and this is particularly true of people who live outside the United States, these companies are under the control and law of the United States. And even though our Constitution protects people like me, a United States citizen, from certain government agencies spying on them, this does not protect people from outside of the United States in the same way. So people in Chile, for instance, would not be able to count on the people who are our laws to protect them. So my friend started a project to put together a completely secure server that's easy to install, that has no blobs of binary software in it so that you can look at every single piece of the software if you wish, and be relatively easy to install and administer using a control panel when you first log into the system. On top of this, you could also put in Nextcloud software, which is cloud software that runs on your server. You're in control of it, and you can determine who you're going to share all of your data with. And on top of that, there's software called Fediverse.party. That's the actual URL name. And it is things to replace things like Twitter, Facebook, other types of software. But instead of a central place that controls it, you have a distributed control center. So this is spread out. And this is software that you can control. You can say who belongs to it. You can say what the features are that you're going to use. It's all under your control, not somebody else's. In addition to all of that, the Freedom Box shows you how to get free certificate authentication. So, you've seen it going to websites, HTTPS, a secure website, because it has a certificate that assures you that when you access that website, you're actually accessing something that is the real website, not a fake website. But that certificate oftentimes costs money. There is a way you can get a certificate for free that you can apply to your own server so that people know that when they go to your server, it's actually your server and not somebody else who's trying to fool you. And in addition to all of that, there are multi-factor authentication keys that use a technique called FIDO2, which allow you to have a super secure system that you actually have to stick this key into your system to do certain things, like change passwords or reinstall other applications on it. So all of these things can be combined, and these are things that you can sell or give as a gift to other people, showing them how to use it, setting it up for them, and at the same time, learning how to use these things. Now, I have a relatively small home in the United States, but I'm trying to cut back on electrical utilization. And so I replaced all of my incandescent bulbs and fluorescent bulbs with LEDs. And a lot of these are smart LEDs, so I can turn them on or off by remotely. And because sometimes, I'm old, like I said, and I forget to close my garage door or I leave the lights on or anything, I need to know what's happening in my home. And I can do this because a lot of these devices are now smart devices. Now, a lot of people use Google Home or other cloud services like Alexa or something like that. And yes, Google can control all these different devices. And I can control the devices with my voice, with voice commands. Or I can control them through an Android app on my phone. And I can see whether the thing is on or off or how bright it is or things like that. I can control these devices from all over the world, assuming I have some type of internet connection. And you say, hey, that's great, but what's wrong with that? Well, I found out that these devices really talk a lot, way more than you think they would talk for just turning a light on or off or setting a light at a particular brightness or things. And you don't really know what they're saying. You don't really know who they're sending this information to. And can somebody take this information and figure out, oh, gee, he must not be home at this point because his lights are all off or things like that. And the other thing about it is that this is all controlled by voice. It's very sensitive. And these things are always listening. I will say something in one room and some other speaker at the other end of my house will answer back and tell me, reactivate to what I have said. And that means that this basically is hearing everything that is said or done in my house. And that's a little scary sometimes. Now, to activate these things, you use keywords. And I'm actually not going to say the keywords right now because if I do, then all these devices in my house are going to start acting up and asking me what I want, things like that. And there's times where I don't really want them to use these keywords. I'd love to change the keyword to something else, like, for example, the word Shazam. Now, that's a word I don't normally use in conversation. I don't even use it in my technical speaking and stuff like that, or my technical walk. So Shazam would be a great keyword for me, but they don't allow me to use that. Instead, they make me use the keyword they want to use, and that's a problem for me. And finally, what happens if Google stops supporting Google Home? It walks away from this software and says, well, we're not going to do this anymore. And this has happened before. They had a system much like Facebook that they called Orchid. And there were a lot of people in Latin America who loved Orchid, particularly Brazil. Brazilians loved Orchid. And they were using it and things like that. But then Facebook came along and everybody moved, to Facebook in the United States, and poor Orchid was abandoned. Well, that's one thing, but if you really have a lot of hardware investment that you're in your whole house, having somebody abandon that is a bad idea. So I recommend homeassistant.io. It's an open source system to control devices in your homes and your businesses. It really is what we call a software backplane. It's a piece of software that ties together thousands and thousands of plug-in modules that allow you to talk to different devices and have the devices talk to each other. And it also gives the voice control that I like with my Google Home stuff, and in many languages, not just English. And it also could be coordinated with various calendars. So you can set up, turn on the lights at a particular time or off at a particular time, or don't turn them on and off during a holiday season, whatever you want. You can actually work this into your calendars. And as far as, is this going to be around for a long time? Well, today, Home Assistant is the second largest and most active project on GitHub. It's second only to Linux itself. And there's a worldwide community of people who are working with it and setting up different devices and stuff. There's over 254,000 installations of it and 13,500 people contributing to it. So it's a very strong project, and it's been going on for 10 years. So it's probably going to be around for a very long time. It has a wide variety of different hardware platforms you can run it on. They sell one, Home Assistant Yellow, that's kind of integrated with this, but you can run it off of a Raspberry Pi or an Ordred, which is a completely blobless single board computer. You could put it on a generic Intel system. You could actually start to set up Home Assistant on your laptop to see how it works. You can set up your dashboard and things like that. And or you could even use a Windows system. It doesn't have to be Linux, or it could be Mac OS. So a wide variety of different operating systems and hardware combinations to run this. It can also integrate with Alexa and Google Assistant and others. But of course, this has some privacy drawbacks because there's some, if you don't do the integration right, you're going to be sending a lot of information to Alexa and Google Assistant. And if this is your main concern, you probably don't want to do that. You probably want to stay away from integration with those different cloud-based systems. It can also integrate with device makers like Philips, who makes a lot of light bulbs and switches, or Kia. And you can integrate it with your Plex Media Center that we talked about earlier, so that you can use Home Assistant IO to control your media center, playing music at a certain time or certain speakers in your house or whatever. There are two main protocols for controlling the different types of switches and lights and things. One is called Z-Wave and one is called Zigbee. These are both supported by Home Assistant IO, and they can be configured to be very secure so that people can't break into your home or turn your lights on and off without your permission. Here's a picture of a dashboard, a typical dashboard that you can set up for a small apartment. You can see that it'll show you the different lights and switches and things and the state that they're in, whether they're turned on or off. It'll also be able to tell you things like what's the temperature outside, or, all different types of things can be integrated into this dashboard to give you a real appreciation of what's happening in your home or your small business. People create blueprints, which are templates of turning on various things and controlling various things. They create these blueprints and they contribute them to the community. So if there's some project you want to do, first thing you should do is see if somebody else has created a blueprint that would help you do that. And there is a scripting language which allows you to control devices called YAML. And then there's a protocol which is being developed called MQTT for talking to devices. And these two, the scripting language and MQTT, are being integrated into the system. So you can see there's a lot of stuff that's going on here and a lot of very sophisticated software programming that's happening. Now, there are some issues, I'll be blunt with you, about Home Assistant. This is really not set up for mom and pop to use, your mother and father or your aunt and uncle, because there's a lot of technical terms in the documentation, and selecting the electronics may be a little bit past what their capabilities are. But this is the place where you can give them the benefit of your time and energy and knowledge to helping them set this up in their house. And at the same time, you're learning about this so that you could also, either use this as a job to go out and help other people, integrate this type of thing into their house. You could sell support for this. And, it takes a fair amount of time to figure out how this Home Assistant is going to work in a particular house. And you could help people do that and then go ahead and install it and make it work. But the good news is that you don't have to do all of these things at one time. You can start off very simple with simple needs and implement things over time. So it could be something that is a continuously giving gift. There is also a very active and helpful community around Home Assistant where you can ask questions, and it does have very good documentation. In fact, there are whole books written on Home Assistant and how to set it up and how to use it. It's a very open project. You can see all the source code for it. And this is an excellent business opportunity to automate new and existing homes and businesses with Home Assistant. Here's an example of the Home Assistant yellow piece of hardware that they sell. It uses a Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4 as the brains to it and the RAM. You can put a M2 expansion slot on there for an SSD drive. I mentioned that before. I actually have a 1 terabyte disk drive storing this. That's way overkill, but it's all solid state. It's going to last for a very long time. And there's a Zigbee module built in, which allows you to communicate with a lot of these devices, the switches and the lights and things like that. This is Caninos Lucas Labrador. This is a computer being made in Brazil. It's not purposely made for Home Assistant, but you could run a lot of the applications on this that I've been talking about. You could run the secure server, the freedombox.org software, or you could run all different types of software on this. The thing is that this is manufactured and produced in Latin America. And what we want to do is to spread the knowledge of how to do this to other countries so that they too can produce their own computers instead of being dependent on China or the United States or other countries. So here's a list of the resources. The homeassistant.io web page is very good. There is a book, very new, September 23rd, 2023, called Building a Smart Home Automation Solutions with Home Assistant. So step by step, it tells you how to configure and integrate and manage the software. And it's a very good book. So I've been talking about, doing this as gifts for people, and even a gift in effect for you. But you could also use this as something to earn money and supporting, in supporting small business. This would be something that you could do to earn money. And Home Assistant, although it's meant kind of for a home, you could use it in a small business to control the lights, the air conditioning, and things like that, which would help them save money. The small server, the Freedom Box, could be used on a small business to be able to help them keep their secure, the things about their business secure. Here is another business idea. The thing on the upper left is a point of sale system that is in a Starbucks. I'm sure you've seen it. It has a printer, it has a cash drawer, it has an LCD panel, sometimes a scanner, and people use this to ring up sales and collect money. This is typically sold by companies like SAP or Oracle ERP, and they charge a lot of money for it, and it is very inflexible. On the right-hand side, you see a system that's called Odoo. It does much of the same thing as the POS and ERP system of SAP or Oracle ERP, but it's all open source software and relatively inexpensive hardware. What can you do with this? You can do many of the things that SAP and Oracle do. You can maintain inventory. You have customer relationship management systems. You can set up a point of sale system. And it runs on a wide variety of different pieces of hardware. Debian is an operating system that has integrated all of Odoo into it for free. And there are 5 gold and silver resellers of Odoo in Chile. So if you decided that you wanted to install this and help set it up for people, and you got to a certain level, you could have a contract with these 5 gold and silver resellers to do upper level support for you and for the small business. We've been ordering the hardware off of the internet. It's available in Latin America, the small printer, the scanner, the LCD panel, and putting together Odoo systems which students could sell to small business people and help them configure it and set it up. And there's hundreds, even thousands, of additional open products that are available with free software, open hardware, that you could put together a plan to sell this to people and make money as a project. So with that, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. I think we have about 10 minutes of Q&A available, and I thank you very much for listening to my talk.
Falabella. Un equipo de más de 90,000 personas en 9 países distintos. Juntos hacemos un gran ecosistema y comparte la pasión por la tecnología al servicio del cliente. Sé parte de Falabella y súmate a nuestro propósito: simplificar y disfrutar más la vida.